Hello, and welcome to Cleveland State University. My name is Darrell Cannon, and I am a senior at Whitney Young School. Our special guest today is Margot Lee Shetterly. Ms. Shetterly is the author of Hidden Figures, the best-selling true story of 4 Black women mathematicians who helped win the space race. She is also the Cleveland Foundation's 2017 Anisfield-Wolf Book Awards Nonfiction winner. She accepted the award last night. Please help me welcome Ms. Shetterly.
Cleveland State, I am honored and excited to be here. Thank you for this warm welcome. This dance was incredible. And the thing that occurred to me watching it is how many different ways you can express the same set of ideas. And for me to see the ideas that have been lived in real life, then expressed in my book, and then in the movie to see them on stage here expressed through live dance was really expanded my understanding of the story as well. So thank you so much for that. And congratulations on a beautiful and powerful piece of art. Sometimes people ask me, how did you come up with the title Hidden Figures? And this is one of the most frequently asked questions about the book. And I have to tell you that it was probably the 5th title. There were a number of titles, From the Earth to the Stars, just trying to come up with the right title for this particular book. And at some point, Hidden Figures, and I don't even remember the exact moment, but it just snapped into my mind because Hidden Figures, it expressed everything that I wanted to say in this book in 2 words. It was like a 2-word haiku poem, just succinct to the point, but that had all of these layers of meaning. And one of the most rewarding things for me since the book has come out, it was published a year ago, September 6th, a year ago. So, and then September 8th, a year ago today, I stood in front of a crowd in my hometown of Hampton, Virginia, and really gave my first public speech about Hidden Figures. So today is a really special day for me. But in that year since the book has come out, something very interesting has happened, and that is that the word, or Hidden Figures, the phrase, has come to mean something beyond even the story of the women that I write about in the book. It's become a way, a shorthand really, for telling untold stories and for seeing things that we should have seen, that we should have acknowledged, and for some reason, many reasons, we haven't. And so, I'll see or hear people talking about the hidden figures of Cleveland, or, the hidden figures in the military. And it's really been very beautiful for me to see this phrase tap into something that maybe we've all been looking for but haven't quite known what to call. And I start to think of Hidden Figures as a way of putting on 3D glasses. So you look at the world around you and you often don't see a lot of things, but when you put on these 3D glasses, you see things that you miss otherwise. And what we've really figured out with these, by putting on these glasses, is that history is all around us, and that stories matter, that seeing these people who have been hidden previously and who come to life when we put on these glasses, that these stories give our lives meaning. They really help us understand our past, and they help us to point the way to the future. So it is such an honor for me to see yet another version of that process of looking into our past and bringing meaning to our past and our present come to life here in the form of this dance. So I just want to say thank you again for this incredibly warm welcome to Cleveland. Thank you for that all of you have done to support Hidden Figures and this history. And I look forward to our conversation on stage. Thank you.
I would now like to welcome my fellow CMSD students to the stage. They are Natalie Parsons from Facing History New Tech High School, and Kamari Williams from Bard High School Early College.
Good morning, Ms. Shetterly.
Good morning.
My name is Natalie P. I'm from Facing History New Tech High School. And I just want to say, first off, this book really inspired me. I enjoyed it when we read it in class. And it's really encouraged me to look up scientists that have been forgotten in our past by history. And the question I'd like to ask, I'm wondering what made you decide to write about these specific hidden figures of our history?
So what made me decide to write about them? Well, it's sort of, it's an interest, that's a very good question. I actually grew up with the Hidden Figures. So my father worked at NASA Langley, which is, part of, like NASA Glenn is here, part of the NASA network. And he's now retired, but he's an atmospheric research scientist. And a lot of these women, including Katherine Johnson, Mary Jackson, Christine Darden, who is in the book, she's not in the movie because she's a younger generation, but she is in the book. They were all part of the community that I grew up in. I went to school with their kids. They were friends of my parents. They worked with my father. So they were, in a sense, hidden to me, I think, because I saw them first as members of the community and not really as in terms of the work that they did. And it was really a moment when my husband, who's sitting right over there, we had gone home to visit my parents, and my dad was talking about Katherine Johnson and the other women and what they had done in their jobs at NASA. And my husband said, "Wait a minute, I've never heard that story before. This is a really incredible story, and this isn't something that I learned in the history books." It wasn't something that I learned in the history books either, but there were a lot of these stories that I heard in the background growing up, but because I was so close to it, didn't see it the way we're seeing it now. So that was really the first spark. And I think for me, it was a way to tell my own story without being in the story. Because my father came to NASA and he really stood on the shoulders of those women and had a very successful career there and was able to raise a family there in this great community, had a great job. So I consider myself a real product of the pioneering work that those women did.
Hello, Ms. Shetterly. I am Kamari Williams, and I am a student at Bard High School Early College. And as I read your prologue in your book, you stated that all too often, their portrayals in history are burdened with negative imagery and vulnerability that come from being both Black and female. Why was it important to you to provide Black girls and women with alternative, positive images of themselves?
So writing this book, for me, it was really writing the book that I wanted to read. I was always the first reader for this book. And I really like these great sweeping stories, these great historical epics. And there are very few stories like that where women get to be the protagonists, and even fewer where Black women get to be the protagonists. And so what I really wanted for these women who had these incredible lives, they were full people, They had these interesting personal lives, very dynamic professional lives, and they had lives that intersected a lot of these great moments of history. What I really wanted was to give them a star turn. You know, I wanted them to be on stage exactly like these dancers were today, bold and brave and beautiful and confronting all of these issues, beautiful issues, difficult issues. That's what I wanted, for them to be as fully realized as the stories that we get about presidents and the stories that we get about the famous people in history. That's what I want in my life for myself. I think that's what we all want in our lives for ourselves, to be the star of our own lives. And I wanted that portrayal for these women and for myself, and by extension for all of the rest of us.
In the very beginning of I'm sorry. Hello, my name is Darrell, as I stated already, and I am a student at Whitney Young Gifted and Talented Leadership Academy. At the very beginning of you planning your book, what drove you to complete it? Like, was it that you have a passion for engineering or mathematics and computers, or was it just that these women had a story that you thought everyone deserved to hear?
I think the thing that drove me most with this book is I wanted to know what happened. There was a lot that I knew. I knew Katherine Johnson and remembered her from when I was a little girl. Mary Jackson. I knew about NASA. I knew about the space program, and its impact on the city where I grew up, Hampton, Virginia. For example, the main road in Hampton, Virginia is called Mercury Boulevard. And it's actually named for Project Mercury, the first manned space mission. But you know, these things fade into the background and nobody really thinks about it. It's just like, okay, I've got to go to Best Buy, I'm going to drive up Mercury Boulevard, and that's it. But I wanted to know what happened. I knew some of the facts, but I didn't know even close to the whole story. So, for example, in my first interview with Katherine Johnson, she mentioned Dorothy Vaughan, and I had never heard the name Dorothy Vaughan. So, but once I heard the name and Katherine Johnson spoke about how brilliant she was, and Katherine Johnson being a brilliant person, singing the praises of Dorothy Vaughan means that, you know, I needed to know exactly who this Dorothy Vaughan was. I was just so curious about all of it and about what had happened. How did these women start working at NASA? Why did they come to Hampton, Virginia? What was the importance of the airplane, which really gave birth to the space program? I was just insatiably curious about all of it. And so even while I was excited at the idea of writing a book about this story, I was also, the more I learned about this story, the more interested I became in the details of the history. So a lot of the drive to finish it was for myself, again, to understand this history and to solve a lot of these mysteries that kept popping up as I did the research.
Thank you.
Now, this is a two-part question, and if you would like me to do it one at a time, that's fine. But what was the process of how your books became a movie, and were there key parts of this history that the movie omitted or altered historically? Mm-hmm.
So to your first question, the process of my book becoming a movie was unusual. This is my first book, so getting the first book published is a pretty remarkable thing, and you know, I feel very grateful to have had that happen. To have it made into a movie at the same time, basically, is extremely unusual. And what happened is my literary agent, the one who found the publisher, she got the book proposal, so the document where I said, okay, I'm going to write about these women, it's going to be called Hidden Figures, this is how long it's going to be, this is what it's going to cover. She got that document into the hands of the movie producer, a woman named Donna Gelati, who then called me up. She loved the story, she really identified with the women, and she said, we're going to make a movie, you know. And this is, not only was the book not done, I was, really in like the peak writing stages, like in the, still finding things out with research and writing, and, there was so much more work left to do. So I was sitting at home, staying up into the late hours trying to finish the book, while these people in the movie business, that got a hold of Hidden Figures, were moving along as quickly as they could to turn the book into a movie. So these things were happening at the same time, which is why my book came out a year ago, and the movie came out in last December, so quickly together, or so soon together. So having, seeing this process of having a book adapted into a movie up close was really interesting, because just the same way the dance has a particular form and these ideas have to be expressed in a particular form, that was also true of the movie. And so here I had this book that started in 1943, ended in 1969, and the movie people said, you know what, we're just going to focus on 1962, Katherine Johnson's space flight. And I'm like, well, I wrote, all these other years. There was so much interesting stuff. Why can't that be in the movie too? And, a movie lasts for 2 hours. You've got to tell a story. Nobody wants to fall asleep in the movie theater. And they made the very good decision of cutting it down to that one very dramatic moment. And what that required was changing some of the storylines and creating, discontinuities in terms of the time and the characters. And there were times when, I was like, I can't believe this. They're going to change this. This didn't actually happen in real life. There was no Kevin Costner character sledgehammering the colored sign in the bathroom in real life. But what the movie did very effectively, I felt, was capture the spirit of the women and the authenticity of their community, the energy of that time in the space program, both the hopefulness and the fear that was caused by Sputnik and the Soviet Union. So at the end of the day, I learned a tremendous amount. It was like a master's class in so many different things. I mean, it was just, I hadn't done any of this before, so everything was new. But I was very happy with the outcome of the movie. I really think it's a great movie, and I love it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, this was also in your prologue, and you said your home was a place to be from rather than a place to be. As you were traveled throughout your life, what does the place of your rearing mean to you? Have your feelings changed?
It's funny, since the book has come out, I've spent more time in Hampton, Virginia than I have since I went away to college. And my parents are still there. Katherine Johnson, her family lives there. Dorothy Vaughn's children are there. Mary Jackson's family's there. Christine Darden. All of the people in the book live there. And all of the other people they worked with at NASA, they're all there. And so I think that the process of writing Hidden Figures, what it did for me is it allowed me to resolve some of the, I think, internal conflicts that I had about being from this place and, trying to figure out how to be, have these identities of being Black, of being a woman, of being from the South, of being a professional woman, of being ambitious, all of these different things that compete within you, that within all of us about who we are, and trying to pull them together in a unified whole. So at the end of the day, I'm just Margot Lee Shetterly, but they're all these component parts. And I think along the way of Hidden Figures, it created a lot of space for all of those parts, and also for being from this really wonderful, unique, interesting place that was just where I grew up, and had taken for granted, and we just wanted to go away and see the big world. And what I didn't realize is how much of the big world was there exactly where I started. So it's this process of where you're from and where you go back to and where your home is. Hidden Figures really was an exercise in unifying all of those things for me.
When writing your book, how was your research process? Was it long and tedious or pretty smooth?
I would say that it was long and fascinating. It was really fascinating. So the process of telling these stories really involved pulling together a lot of bits and pieces of the history from different places, because there were the interviews that I did with the women themselves, with Katherine Johnson, who just turned 99 years old and on August 26th. So she obviously has a long history of telling her own story, and the stories of the other women too, like I mentioned about Dorothy Vaughan. A lot of time with their families, the family of Dorothy Vaughan, the family of Mary Jackson, with my dad and his recollections of those women, because he worked with a lot of them. NASA has done a very good job in preserving its history. So a lot of the documents and the details from the book came from phone books, from seating charts, from photographs from the 30s to the present day. Anything that I could get to get a full picture of what the lives were like for these women, what the work was like. I spent a lot of time looking at research reports, learning a lot of the engineering. So I had to take a lot of time and understand exactly what kind of work the women were doing, not just that they went to work, but what is it that they were doing when they actually got there. And what were the times like in those days? The secondary story of Hidden Figures is about the desegregation of the schools in the state of Virginia. And so I had to learn a lot about the details of that, the political side of that, the legal side of that, and what it was like for those children there who had their schools closed in the wake of the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision. So I loved the research. Again, this was like a big mystery, like a detective story. And I was putting together all the pieces. So, I think that if for some reason the writing thing doesn't work out, then maybe my next job is as a private investigator. I really loved getting all the pieces together.
What was the most difficult part about writing your book?
The most difficult part about writing the book. I think for me the most difficult part about writing the book was the fact that I was not writing about my life, but I was writing about other people's lives, and feeling a tremendous responsibility to tell the truth and to do justice to the lives of other people, and to do it in a way that didn't portray them as perfect, because nobody's perfect, but portrayed them in a way that was very relatable and honored what they had done in their life. So I think that for me it was really hard to figure out how to write about other people in a way that when people were reading the book, they felt as if they were living Dorothy's life and living Catherine's life and living Mary's life. I really wanted people to feel that they were seeing their lives from the inside. And that really requires digging a lot into other people's lives. And that was hard, but I think at the end of the day, it turned out really well. And their families, the families of the women, and Catherine and Christine, who are still with us, were very generous in terms of sharing their experiences with me so I could tell their story.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have any advice to all the black women or black or black girls who's like living in like the west side, the bad parts, and the bad parts of the east side? Like, do you have anything to tell them, like how to get back up on their feet, and with not only education but with relationships with their family?
Well, what I would say to them is something that Katherine Johnson said to me, and that Katherine Johnson's father said to her, and which I think it's one of the best pieces of advice I've ever had. And this is something when you ask Katherine Johnson, well, you were a black woman in the segregated South, you were a woman working in a predominantly male engineering environment, very assertive, very aggressive, hard-charging environment. How did you have the guts to stand up and tell your boss that you were the right person to do the calculations for this particular John Glenn's flight? That you were the one, not somebody else, but you, this black woman in the segregated South, you were the right person. And she said, listen, my father always told me, you are no better than anyone else, and no one is better than you. And this is the motto that she lives by. And it's something that's simple at first, and yet it's very complex and very nuanced. And what I think that phrase does is that it gives you the confidence, first of all, to walk into a room with anybody, regardless of who they are and regardless of who you are, and to say, I am as good as anybody in this room. But what it also does, and I think this may be the more powerful part of it, that says, regardless of where I come from, I have something to give to other people. And it might be the President of the United States, but because I am a human being and the President of the United States is a human being, I am going to treat that person. I'm going to give first. I'm going to treat them with respect because that's the person that I am. I'm going to believe in the greater humanity of the person that I'm with, regardless of who they are, and lead with that. And that's really the way that she leads her life. And it's a kind of philosophy that has given her tremendous resilience. She's someone who has had an amazing life, but she's had a lot of tragedies in her life. Her first husband passed away. She had a daughter also die several years ago. And yet when you ask her about her life, she says she's been the luckiest person in the entire world. And I think that philosophy and that embracing both of her humanity and of the humanity of other people is responsible for that. And so I would say, when you're in doubt, in a doubtful situation, when you feel down, when you're looking for a way to pick yourself up and how to be with other people, remember what Katherine Johnson said that her father told her, you are no better than anyone else and no one is better than you.
Let's give it up for this profound and searching conversation in Cleveland, Ohio. Students, you can take your seats. We are in your debt, as we are in the debt of Ms. Shetterly. You can come. And we have a special treat to close us out. One of John Hay's own, a 2017 graduate, now studying at Howard University. She came back to join us and to bring us home, Zephaniah Galloway.
Hi, it's so great to be back home. So yes, I graduated from John Hay in May, and now I am a freshman political science and Africana studies major at the illustrious Howard University in Washington, D.C. Wow, there's so many of you. So I wrote a speech back in April, and it's pretty much about what it means to be Black. All of my life, I was growing up, and I was always too white for the Black kids, and I went to the white kids, and I was too Black for them. And it was always really hard trying to find out, where I fit in. We all want to belong to a group, but we all want to be individuals as well. So that's kind of what my speech is about, and I hope you all enjoy it. What does it mean to be Black? Is it the clothes we wear or the music we listen to? Is it fitting stereotypes based on negative preconceived notions about my race? This is a question I have yet to answer. It's an identity dilemma I face every time I look in the mirror and ask myself, who am I? All of my life, I've been told the many things Black people didn't do. Black people didn't live in two-parent homes or eat vegetables that weren't collard greens, and we definitely didn't care about politics unless former President Obama was involved. See, the most frustrating part about these comments is that they weren't coming from people outside of my culture. They were coming from people that looked just like me. In elementary and middle school, many Black students would laugh and call me a closeted white girl or an Oreo because I didn't fit many well-known stereotypes about what it meant to be Black. I mean, I was vegetarian at the time, couldn't dance, and I listened to punk rock music. When these characteristics became a white thing, I honestly don't know. But I do know that the discrimination and stereotyping of Black people has caused many of us to internalize it and continue the very same cycle of oppression in our own communities. So, I tried being more Black and fitting into stereotypes placed on my race to fit in. I started listening to rap music, even though I didn't really like it. I watched every single movie on BET, and I even quit my vegetarian lifestyle and replaced it with one of eating fried chicken and watermelon. I soon became less hated at my school, but when I got home and took the facade off, I was left feeling empty. I was acting, and the only award I received was the constant reminder that I was losing myself trying to fit in. This experience caused my aforementioned identity crisis. What does it mean to be Black? Is it the way my skin absorbs sun rays? Is it the way my hair twists and turns like the Nile River in the land from which my ancestors were stolen? To this day, I can't answer that question because it calls on the overgeneralization of over 1 billion people. Overgeneralizations cause stereotypes, and I refuse to be a part of this cycle of oppression. I embrace diversity by emphasizing that it's okay to be different and to accept others. I am an activist that has protested racial inequality and police brutality with the New York chapter of Black Lives Matter. I co-authored a book urging readers to stand against sexism and rape culture. In July, I traveled to Guatemala to help teach students about sustainability while also learning about their culture and volunteering. Because this is who I am. I am more than the color of my skin. Thank you.